Hey guys, it's Angie here from Money in the Bank podcast. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. I just wanted to apologize for the delay in posting. There was a family emergency, so unfortunately I had to be out of town for a while, and it just kind of threw off my editing and posting schedule, but I'm back now. I have several already edited and in the queue ready to go, so we're in for some pretty exciting episodes here. The next one was a special request by some of my really good friends, Megan and Paul. You can actually find her over at astanglife.blogspot.com. She's super talented with restoration and coming up with recipes and quilting, all sorts of things. And she's actually adding a new addition to her family soon. So this one is specifically for them. I hope they enjoy it, and I'm glad to have everybody listening in. Without further ado, here's this week's episode.
Money in the bank.
Hey podcasters, it's Angie here from Money in the Bank. So we're back with another episode for you guys today. We're pretty excited about this one. Some of our good friends are expecting their first baby, and they actually listened to our podcast and reached out with this topic idea. So while we currently are not parents ourselves yet, a lot of this stuff I still have the knowledge about, so I think we can still get some good information out there today. So with me today I have Brett.
Hey, glad to be back.
How's it going, Brett?
Good. Can't wait to be talking about little kids today and planning for the future. I was a young starter myself, so glad to get other people on the same path and in the method and mindset of savings going forward.
Yeah, and I think we both recognize our parents instilling good financial advice on us at an early age, and planting that seed early really helped us. So I think we're pretty excited to share how our parents did that for us and what we really gained from that.
Yeah, and I don't think, today we're not going to be talking about being a parent as much as how much kids cost and the whole future roadmap of planning for pregnancy and all those things. That's a topic in and of itself. We want to talk more about getting kids ready to go for the future, setting them up for success. College planning we'll throw in there too, because that's an expense that most kids, nowadays pay for themselves or end up paying for the next 40, 50 years after they graduate from college. And then long-term, things like life insurance and things that if you start early when you're a kid or just after you're born, that your parents set you up when you're born, that you have in the future, and you're way ahead and have all those extra benefits.
Yeah, and I think especially with insurance, it's a topic that can kind of get a bad rap, and a lot of people, there's just a lot of confusion out there, I think. And so luckily for me, my background is my dad sells insurance and has since I was born. And I actually work in the insurance industry. So I think I can offer a pretty unique perspective on that and why it's not the worst thing in the world. Some people seem to kind of think it is. So I'm pretty excited about that, because I've had a lot of people that, and we'll get into this more in a little bit, but there's whole life versus term insurance, and even financial experts out there like Dave Ramsey will tell you that you should never have whole life, and I kind of disagree with him there. So that might shock a lot of people, and so I'm excited to get more into that too.
Great. Well, so let's save that one for a minute, and let's just start off with when kids are little and they're trying to save for a bank account. What should they be looking at? What should the parents be doing? How early should they get started in that and start planning for the future, right? How do you get kids engaged and excited in saving?
Yeah, so I actually recommend, open a kid their own bank account at a very young age. So I think I had my first bank account when I was 5 or so. And I certainly probably didn't have a lot of money when I was 5, but if you do a kid's checking account, a lot of times you can do that with a balance of $25 or $50, and there's no fees or anything associated with that. And so we all got bank accounts when I was a kid, and we could earn money through chores, or we could earn, we got birthday money from grandparents and aunts and uncles. And so any money that we earned, our parents set up a system where we saved half, and then we had to donate half to charity, or not half, all gone. Save it and donate it. No, we had to donate 10%, and then we could do whatever we wanted with the 40%. And they made it very clear, like, it's not like this 50% that you're saving is going away. It's forever. It's going to your future. And my parents were really good about, like, every month when we got back in those days, we still got the statements in the mail. Now you could probably do it all online with your kid. But we would be able to open our statements and, like, see, okay, so, I started the month with $50 and I put in $10 this month. But because of interest, I got an extra $1. And especially in the 90s, interest rates on saving accounts were a little higher. Mm-hmm. But that kind of taught me at a young age, like, oh, if I just leave my money in there, like, I get even more. And so it was kind of exciting for me. And my parents did give me that freedom of that 40% of anything I got. I could go and buy the new Barbie I wanted. But because I actually liked watching, my bank statements every month, sometimes I would choose to put, 75% in there and spend a little less.
Right, and that's a tough struggle, right? Because if you're looking at that new Nerf gun that's on the shelf at the store, right, and you got your eye on it, I know we had some neighbor kids of ours that, like to get their money, and then they'd come home with like an armful of like Nerf toys and darts and all kinds of fun things, instead of saving it for like a bigger gift, like buying like the new Nintendo or something, right? For $300 instead of spending all the money on Nerf guns for $100, right?
Yeah.
And just getting them in that mindset of like, hey, if you set this aside for a little bit, the next time you get more money in, you can get something that's like twice as good, right? Than you otherwise would. But.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's on the parent to kind of teach your kids, like, saving is important. I had one friend at work, and she was telling me what her parents did was her and her siblings, they would have to write down what they wanted and put it on the fridge. And if they left it on the fridge for 2 weeks and they still wanted it and they had enough money, in their account, they could buy it. And so that kind of, but if any time in that 2-week period they came with another request that they wanted more, it would start the timer all over again.
So training them to be out of the mindset of impulse buying. So that's a good trick. I mean, there's a lot of people who fall victim to that, right?
Well, and I think especially kids fall victim to impulse buying, right? Because when you see that new toy in the store, you want it. But if you walk away, you probably forget about the toy. I did, right?
Or even, kids are directly marketed to so aggressively that the parents almost have no choice sometimes than to like give into it because it's so ridiculous, right? So I do feel bad for a lot of parents out there that, the kids just are screaming about it. They see it on TV all the time. The other kids are getting it because they're so heavily marketed to the same thing, right? It's become overwhelming. And
yeah.
If kids are online or kids are watching TV or whatever, it's all the same stuff now.
And, another thing my parents did, and this is a little off topic, I think, but still relevant. I was a kid who loved books, and books are actually pretty expensive. So instead of buying books all the time, my parents would just take me to the library. Mm-hmm. And so I could read until my heart was content, and that's free.
Right. Yeah, that's a great experience. And getting kids hooked on reading early is a great way to keep entertainment involved for free, right? For the library continue exchanging, and it's an experience to go there and create it as a familiar habitat. And I think kids physically going to places rather than just like giving them a Kindle that has books on it or getting them on like an online bank account, I think really having a tangible experience, like going to the bank. And I know this was true of me. I remember like going to the bank with my parents at an early age and like signing up for a savings account and a checking account and like understanding what the differences were and like seeing that these were the interest rates. And I was in charge of like the change at the end of the day. Like they would, like my dad would come home with change in his pockets and stuff, and they would save it all in a big jar, but like I would get to keep that change as long as I was the one that like sorted all the money out and like put it into the little coin holders, right? Those little paper roll up things. And we went together and like took it to the bank, and like I got to see how much money it was, and then I got to put it in my bank account, right? And that was like an early form of allowance when I was like, 7, 8 years old. And then I started getting a little allowance when I was able to like help out with chores and stuff. And, and then when I was in high school, I was getting like $2 a day for lunch or something that my parents were trying to give me. And I would save like as much of that as I possibly could. I was saving mostly every single day. I was saving those $2 a day. Very rarely would I actually eat lunch in the cafeteria. So then after like 4 years of high school, like that added up to a couple like $1,000 basically.
Yeah. And I really think the key there is getting kids, just to kind of recap this and then we can move on to the next topic, get kids involved early, they understand a lot more than you think, even at a young age. I mean, I remember my bank account at 5. You remember yours at 7. Those are pretty young ages. So get your kid involved early to help teach them the value of savings by, setting things that they can save for, or, doing the 2-week thing on the board. Whatever it is for your family, whatever decision is, just kind of get them involved with money early instead of just having them write down like, oh, I want this new toy, and then it magically appears.
Right. When they don't understand that things cost money in the first place, they just expect, things to show up, and they don't understand the value of it even worse. Because then whether it's something that costs $2 or something that costs like $100, like a doll or something, right? They don't know the difference. Like,
right.
They don't know how expensive American Girl dolls are versus like, a low end Happy Meal toy or something like that.
Just had to bring up my Molly doll.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a story for another podcast. So why don't we move on to the next topic you had?
Sure. So I think now that we know how to get kids to start thinking about money at an early age, the biggest thing that most kids need to plan for is college. So how much does college cost for those kids? How early on should they start thinking about saving for that? And what are the best ways that they can go about starting to put money away for like a college savings fund versus, having some money to spend when they're in high school and things like that?
So this is a big topic. And, for kids, I think it can be a challenge to save up everything you could need for college. So this is going to be kind of a blend of, if you're a parent wanting to help supplement your kid's educational future, or if you're in high school now, this will apply to you, but keep in mind that, if you're a freshman in high school, it's near impossible to save up everything that you would need for 4 years of college. So don't be discouraged by that. Save as much as you can and then take out loans because, you'll have to take out a lot less loans than somebody else. So that's kind of one thing that I just want to preface this conversation with is if you can't get that full college amount saved up, it's okay because loans exist for a reason, right? They exist to help. So kind of going back to that, I'm just going to start with the parent, the young parent that's like, I want to be able to help my kid as much as possible. So I projected it out, and in 18 years, college will cost about $40,000 a year for room and board and tuition at a state school, which is crazy to me. I mean, that's so much money. So estimate that means that's about $160,000 to get your kid through school in 18 years. So the best vehicle that I know of to save is a 529 plan through the government. So every state actually has some different rules around this. So I encourage you to look at your state-specific rules. They all have slightly different tax benefits, but the general idea is that you put money into this account and you can treat it like a mutual fund. So you can invest in, index funds or stocks or bonds or different mutual funds. And then the money will grow, and then you can use it. So you put it in with after-tax dollars. I think of it like a Roth 401k, but instead of retirement, it's for education. So you put your money in after taxes, and then it grows tax-free. And if you use it for education expenses, it comes out tax-free.
Oh, great. So investing the way that we normally would, right? So mutual fund would be the normal go-to, for everybody else doing regular retirement savings now or midterm planning savings for the most part. And so it's basically the same, but it has had some added perks to it then, right? So you get some extra time, for saving. You get to pull it out tax-free, and it's for a dedicated purpose, and as long as you use it for that purpose, it's great. But if you don't decide to use it for that purpose, or your kid does end up going to college,
and you'll just be taxed on it like you normally would, so you just lose the tax benefit at that time, but you might as well keep that tax benefit if you think you might need it.
Right. So it's just an extra safety precaution. Sure.
Yeah. So with that, I did want to break down. So if you're starting and you have a newborn child and you're like, I want to save for them their full retirement, or if not retirement, college. We're just going crazy, right? You're going to set your kid up forever. No, so if you want to save for their full college expense of what we're estimating to be about $150,000, that would be putting in $350 every month and investing in an index fund or stocks. You don't want to invest necessarily into anything, you need that growth rate to help you out. So you don't want to be, too heavily in bonds or something. You want to be more in stocks to get that higher growth rate. I'm assuming a 7% growth rate. So $350 a month.
No, that's like a more expensive car payment, right?
Yeah, that actually is exactly what my car payment was. $352 when I had one. So it's a car payment. And it is a lot of money. But that's why I wanted to reinforce if you get, to your kid is 18 and you have $50,000 saved up for them. So, you put in $150 a month instead of $350. That's still great. I'm quoting, that's room and board, that's tuition, that's no scholarships. And a lot of times, when you move off campus, you can save more money with room and board. And, I knew a lot of people that maybe their parents would cover tuition, but not room and board, And so these are just ballparks to get people thinking. This is by no means, I'm telling you have to pay for your kid's education. This is just trying to be an information dump, right? So, But kids can also contribute to their own 529, which I actually didn't know about, and I didn't do this. But when I was in high school, I could have been contributing to 529, and then even buying textbooks would have been tax-free.
Great, yeah. So, I don't think I knew anybody that was doing that when I was in high school, right? And a lot of us have jobs and stuff, but yeah, nobody was just, when you were setting aside money for college, that's not where you were putting it. You were basically just putting it in your savings account because you were using it in the next couple of years. But yeah, that would have been a good vehicle for that then if you were going to pay off some part of school in the next, 4 to 8 years.
Yeah. Yep. So I think we've about covered college expenses pretty well. Did you have any other topics?
I think that's, that was good for the college one. So the other two topics, I think one was the life insurance that we talked about at the beginning, and then just really teaching kids about money management in general. From the beginning, starting kids with a lemonade stand and getting them out, the birthday and things like that. But, what are some other vehicles for revenue that kids can, think about, or you can put them to work, or, chores is a big one. Like I mentioned, right? I started getting an allowance when I was a kid. Making them earn that money that goes in here makes them feel better about putting things away and really appreciating the value of it.
Yeah. And so actually my high school math teacher, I remember he was telling me this story one time where his son, when I had him, was fairly young. I think he was maybe 8 or something. And my math teacher would pay his son $1 for, completing a certain section of a workbook, a math workbook or something like that. And his son wanted a new game for the Wii so bad that he cranked out 100 of these sections. It was 3 of these math books. And so my teacher was yeah, I had to pay him, $60 or whatever it was to get the new game, but he earned it. So, I think there's a lot of creative things you can do where then really you're rewarding your kid for getting educated. They're learning and they're doing something productive. So, I think a lot of times we focus on chores, but I don't see anything wrong with paying your kids for doing, not just home. It wasn't like he was doing homework. It was extra learning and extra work that he was doing. So I think there's some creative things like that, I knew
kids over the summer, they would get paid to read books too.
Yeah.
And then they would crank out whole books, 25 books over the summer.
So meanwhile, my parents would just sign me up for the program at the library where if you read 100 books, you got a free certificate to go to Old Country Buffet. I didn't even need money. I was just mac and cheese. I'll read 100 books. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of, different things, and that's really up to the parents what they feel comfortable with and what they want to do. But once you get older, going around and mowing yards is something you can do. For me, I babysat a lot. So through different people I met in the neighborhood that I lived in growing up, I would babysit, and I would babysit every day during the week in the summers sometimes, and really earn a lot of extra money that way.
Yeah, I think that's the great approach. And, the lemonade stand example that I mentioned, that's the stereotypical, like, kids doing something for money out on the street. But there was a girl just around the corner the other day from us that was selling lemonade in her front yard, and she's not even on a busy road, but we definitely stopped and like gave her a couple bucks for some lemonade. And, that was a great thing to do. She's doing something to earn that money, really putting herself out there. Hopefully not getting snatched up by somebody just driving along the road, but she's learning a lot of different experiences and skills. And, it's, when you see stuff like that, it's, I really appreciate them trying to learn those extra skills and not being socially, just inside all day playing video games.
I've even seen kids who make like friendship bracelets or paint and sell those, at their lemonade stand. And I think that's great because then you're also teaching them adding value, right? So you have this thread and then you learn how to make a bracelet out of it and somebody will pay you more for that, And so, there's a lot of really good lessons that if you let your kids kind of be little entrepreneurs, they can learn themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I did want to talk about insurance.
You're dying. You're
dying over here.
I'm trying to resist it as long as possible, but fine, we can get into it. Let's talk about life insurance for, planning for your future from the earliest age possible.
Okay, so I think if you are in a financial position to do it, it is a great idea to buy your child whole life insurance. So you will never get a better rate for insurance than when you are 0 years old on your application. I got my whole life insurance when I was age 0. I've had it. My dad I think he did an 18 pay. So he paid until I was 18 and then the policy was all paid up. And I forever have $100,000 of whole life insurance. Now, a lot of people are like, kids don't need insurance, yada, yada. In the off chance that something bad happens, they're protected. Bottom line. But that's not the main reason to buy life insurance.
Right.
So a big example that I've seen with, experienced recently is my grandpa was moved to a nursing home and my grandma still lives, in her own apartment. Well, with nursing home costs being expensive and Medicare will kick on at a certain point to help him pay for this, but they spend your assets down. Well, because his are in life insurance, it's protected. So that means that when my grandpa, or if when he passes away someday, my grandma will still get that benefit back. So even though she's had to spend some of her money down to help keep him getting the care he needs now, she will get that back. So she doesn't have to worry about her end of life, right? Because that's a big concern for her. She's like, I'm spending all this money down and I'm worried that I won't be able to stay living in my apartment. And so it's one of those peace of minds. Like she knows that, and for him, honestly, like he's even said, like he wants his wife to be taken care of when he passes away. And so he's reassured knowing like I have this whole life policy and my wife will be able to stay in her apartment. And that makes him feel good. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot to think about, but really there's always a need for some insurance. I mean, the average cost of a burial right now, and we know this because we just went to our lawyer, is $16,000. So I'm not saying that you need to get $100,000 on your kid, but if you get them a $20,000 policy, it'll ballpark cost you between $15 and $20 a month, if I had to guess, which is a small price to pay for them to always have this protection.
So whole life versus like a term policy, right? So you don't want to look at that. That doesn't help you as a child. That doesn't help you as a kid, right? That's just regular coverage. Kids, are, like you mentioned, more likely than not going to need an insurance policy like that. This is long-term planning. It covers you in the event that there is something, catastrophic that happens when they're a kid, right? But it's more for planning for their future, for their, long-term play.
Yes. And, very importantly, when you insure a kid at such a young age, that's before, so recently I found out I have celiac disease, which could affect the rate I get for life insurance. But because I have this policy that I've had forever, I'm covered and I don't have to worry about it. If I need to add more, I can. So my insurability doesn't go away because I've had it since I was so young.
Right.
And I think that, I think that's so it's just a long-term plan and it's not that expensive, for $10 to $15 to $20 a month, right? Somewhere in that range to get this protection on your kid, to have them covered, to know that they're never going to lose this insurability, and to give them, I always tell people that, because especially Dave Ramsey, because he hates on whole life insurance the most. He argues that it's just not a good investment. Well, I look at it as a tool, right? So you have all these tools in your toolbox for financial planning, and it's one of many. So if I need a screwdriver, a flathead would be a terrible tool, right? When you need a flathead, a screwdriver is a terrible tool. And so whole life insurance is just another tool that you might need in the future. So I always say just, $25,000, throw it on your kid. A lot of them, it'll double when they get to age 18. So if you get them a $25,000 policy, that'll give them $50,000. That's going to be enough whole life for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And it yeah, like you said, it's not really that expensive, right? You just, $10 a month, something like that. And, for long-term peace of mind, basically. And, the rate's never going to get any cheaper. So if you ever want to do it in the future, this is the best time to ever do it. Right. So it's kind of a win-win as long as you have, the mindset to do it up front. More often than not, if anybody ever has any problems, you're set.
But I do want to touch on term life insurance really quick too. It's not the right answer for a kid. I don't think any child needs term life insurance, or maybe there's some select cases that I don't know about, but in general, I don't think kids need term. However, new parents might want to look at term life insurance. Because let's say, you're a stay-at-home mom and your husband is the breadwinner. Well, what would happen if something happened to him? Right? Your family loses all of their income. And so it's a really good idea to just get some term life insurance while you have kids, while they're in the house, just to protect your family, to make sure, okay, if I'm the stay-at-home mom, and something happens, we can afford to stay in the house for a little bit to get everything settled. And because you don't want to do that to your kids if something happens, right? It's already a terrible thing if something happens to somebody, and you don't want to completely uproot their lives and throw their lives into turmoil. So, whether you're a stay-at-home parent or a working parent, I think it's a good idea to get some term life insurance on both parents.
Yeah, and it's the same way you would, when you buy a new house, you get, homeowners insurance to protect the new asset that you got. You're getting a new kid, and you want to protect the asset that you just got, right? So by covering yourself.
And I like that you brought up home, because I also think very few people know that when you buy a house, you can also get a specific decreasing term life insurance that matches your mortgage. So it will always pay your mortgage off in the event that one of the earners die. Because I think if you buy a house on dual income and you're expecting to have that dual income and then something happens to one person, that can be a big tragedy. So that's something else that you can get when you buy a house also.
Well,
so
we could spend, an hour talking about when you buy a new house and all the different nuances around that. So
just, a couple pitches here for term life insurance, because I think insurance, again, it just goes back to being another really good tool in that toolbox.
Yeah, it's not a great return on investment necessarily, right? But it is, it's a safety net. It's kind of like your emergency fund, right? Yeah, it's a safeguard, but it's also, there's some cool things that you can do with it later on in life that make it really beneficial, and has, some flexibility around it.
And you don't buy life insurance for its ROI.
No.
I mean, that's not the purpose of it. That's not why you're buying it. So, you want to look at it as it stands and what it's for, and really understand it.
Great. Well, I think, do you have any other things to cover on this one? I think that's all I had.
I don't think so. I think we're good. So if people have any other questions, if there's anything that we missed, do reach out. Let us know. If we completely missed the mark, we do not have kids yet. So if we completely missed the mark, let us know. But hopefully we gave you guys some good ideas on getting your kids set up with bank accounts from a young age, looking into 529 plans in your state to understanding them a little bit more, as well as, a little bit more insight on insurance and why it's not evil. All right. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Money in the Bank. Make sure to subscribe to us on the iTunes or Stitcher app so that you get weekly alerts every time we post a podcast. Or if you want, you can visit my website, moneyinthebankpodcast.com. And if you want to reach out with any questions or further comments, please email me at Angie@moneyinthebankpodcast.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Money in the bank. Money in the bank.